Hello everyone, welcome to Painting Crafty. If you're new here, I'm Melanie. I'm glad you're here. And to my returning artist friends, I'm so glad you're taking an art break with me today. Today I'm going to be showing you step by step this tutorial of how I created these echinacea watercolor flowers, or cone flowers is another name for them, and then adding a little bit of mixed media steps to the end if you would like. I'm going to start with the drawing part, a little bit of tips and tricks of how to do the flower, and then I'm going to move into the watercolor and then end with a few mixed media ideas. It's all optional. You could create as much as you would like. For those of you who might be interested, I do have a Ko-fi page. That is where I host my subscription for all of the line tracers that I do. A line drawing, it looks like this. This is what you can get. It's wonderful to be able to trace that. Often I like just tracing as well too, because it makes quick process of my drawing. Or I also like to draw and have a reference. So it's all up to you, but it's an easy to join, very reasonably priced, and I'd love to have you come on over. It's a great way to support my channel. I'm going to start with the drawing steps and then work my way into the watercolor. So grab your pencils and your watercolor paper and join me. To start the drawing process, let's take a look at how the petals of this flower are actually developed or grown. With this echinacea plant or the cone flower, the petals droop down. So the centers are a little higher, and then the petals, they droop down onto the side. There's also another characteristic about this flower is normally the petal is smaller here, gets a little wide as it comes down, and then it gets to a point, kind of generally to follow. But as you can see, you do have a little bit of lapping over. You can do a double roll of petals if you'd like, or a single. It doesn't really matter. You can just draw them in, but what helps it give it that real cone flower look is to make sure your petals are kind of more drooping down a little ways in towards the centerpiece. It's narrower, goes out just a little wider, and then comes to a rounded point. So let's go ahead and show you how I kind of developed that idea. So to do my flowers, I start, let's do this one. What I do is I start with my idea of where I want to place my flowers on my page, because that's the big showstopper of this drawing and this painting are the flowers. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to call it a flying saucer shape here. This is just going to give me an idea of where I want to build my flower. Now to do the center, I'm going to start on top, and it's going to be a rather gumdrop shape. Let's see if I can't move that down. A gumdrop shape. So I'm going to start here with a smile face right at the edge of my circle. There's where I'm going to be building the center part of my flower. And then we're going to be doing this gumdrop shape on the top, or the cone on the top. And there we have our center. Now this is where we're going to be building our petals off of. So I'm going to be starting here and then following a little bit that flying saucer shape. So I'm going to be coming small here, coming out, and then ending with that soft little rounded edge. And now I'm going to start here. This is where it gets a little tricky. Our tendency is wanting to start here right next to it, but I want you to start another new petal. So here we have that little, let's just call it like a V shape or a triangle, part of our triangle at the top. Then let's curve it out a little bit more and then come down, make it a little rounded point, and then back in. And then let's start over here. Let's do this again. Now I can go behind this flower, so I can bump it up next to that flower, come out, maybe I come peek back a little ways, and then around. But again, the idea is keep it small here. Okay, and then we're going to come out, down, a little rounded point, and around. Now you can come up this area here, start at the top, because I'm going to be starting here. I don't want to get too far over. Okay, so we're going to do that rounded here, come back up to that point, and come around. Okay, so we still got that idea of where we're building our flower. Now you can come back in and do another one layer if you wanted to do some ones that were behind it. You would just choose an area to kind of block it in there. I'm not going to add a lot of extra petals underneath mine. Now before I were to do the watercolor part, I definitely want to erase this part. And when you're doing yours, I would do your circles. I'm doing mine lighter or darker so that you could see them. I would do this part, the oval, the flying saucer shape, really lightly in pencil so it's easier to erase. So that's that direction. Now let's take a look. When I do my composition, I want to make sure I'm having them different directions. So if this one's pointing this direction, perhaps I want to set my next one up here. So I'm going to be setting it up here. And then my other one, maybe I want to have it, maybe it's going to go behind a little bit there. So I can take a look, and depending on where I put that little gumdrop shape depends on which direction my flowers are going. Now these I'm only seeing just half flowers. So my gumdrop, that's hard to say, my gumdrop shape is going to be at the top of my little part, my circles, or semi, what we call them, flying saucer shapes is going to be there. And again, I'm going to create that gumdrop shape there. And then this one here, I'm going to be able to come around. Again, we would just follow our petal shapes this way is what we would do, and come back around. So that's how the system of the flower is built. Now to do the leaves on them, you would look here at the center of your flower, kind of just lightly go down. This is going to be where your stem is. So you're going to be able to come down that direction. That's going to be indicating of where your stem should be. So look at your centers. And if you're going to go straight down, you would just do more of a straightish, or you can go ahead and give it a curve. I kind of like doing a little bit of a curve on mine. So that's where my stems would be. And then the echinacea leaf is just your standard size leaf here. It's a little bit longer is what normally it is. But again, the star of the show is going to be those flowers, and the leaves are just going to be fillers. So what I did is I just did a longer leaf and coming out. So it's a point here, a point here. Whoops, let's move it up. It's a point here, and then that belly shape in the middle. So if I have one here, perhaps I would want one that comes up this direction, this way. So again, you're just going to want to make sure you have different places for all your different things, so they're not all going the same way. So you wouldn't want all of your leaves, if you're only going to just have a few, you wouldn't want them all on the same sides going the same direction. So you just want to be able to switch it up a little bit. I'm going to be able to have my leaf here as well. And I only did 3 leaves on my picture, but again, that's super optional. Now I will be ending with a little bit of doodle patterns at the end, and I will show you that. Once my watercolor is completely dry, I'll show you how I did that part. So let's go ahead and start with the watercolor part. I'm going to be creating my flowers in this color called Scarlet Red, or just Scarlet, I guess is what it's called. I'm using the Paul Rubens colors, but it really doesn't matter what color you use. Just use the watercolor paint that you might have. So on my flowers, I'm going to be starting with my petals is what I'm going to be working on first. I'm going to skip every other one because I want to make sure there's a separation between my flowers. So I'm going to be starting dark here, and I'm going to be skipping over every other one. I've got a nice little puddle, as you can kind of see. My color is puddled up there. And I want to do every other one. I don't want it to touch. I want to give the colors to be able to chance to dry in between that. And that's going to really allow me to have some separation in my color. Now I'm going to take, that's pretty much full coloration there. I'm going to come off to the side and get just a little bit more watered down version. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to bring that color up there. I'm going to look to maybe even add just a little bit more water. And I'm going to pull that color out. So there's my dark area towards the center, and I'm going to be pulling my color out to get kind of a nice blend of color is what I'm looking for. Okay, this is just on a regular Canson watercolor paper. It's 140 pound. It's not 100% cotton at all. It's just like a cellulose paper type of paper. But and if you're using 100% cotton, that will it will flow differently. You might even get a better blend than what I am. My paint is starting to dry. I can already see where some of my lines are drying, and I want more of a soft blended look. So I'm going to be adding just a little bit of water back in there. I can come back in and add just a little bit more dark if I want to. Wherever that water, the paper is wet, that water is going to want to, the color is going to want to travel towards that water. So I'm going to be adding this in a little bit. Okay. I can always come in with a little clear water, touch that spot, and draw that color towards you. That is how I'm going to be doing all of the petals in between. So I'm going to be giving those ones that are in between these, I'm going to give this a chance to dry and then start those so my colors aren't all blending together. That you're going to see is the process to do this part. I'm going to speed this up a little bit so you can watch, but that's how I'm going to be painting all of the petals of these flowers. You could go ahead and work a little bit on your green leaves while this is drying and give that a chance to dry, and then start working on your leaves. I'm just going to be choosing a medium shade of green and then work a little bit darker. So I'm still going to be simply doing it very similar to how I worked on my petals. I'm going to be doing the same thing on my leaves. So I'm going to be putting my richest pigment here at the base and then pulling my color, lighter color, out. I'm going to be picking up a little bit of this bright green. This color is called Emerald Green Deep, and I'm going to be tapping just a little bit of it here and there. And my colors are wet inside of here now. So it's going to be doing that blend on blend technique of the colors mixing together and creating its own blend without me not doing a whole lot of work and not having a lot of control either. So I'm going to be creating that look. Now this might end up with a few little blooms in it because my watercolor is a little bit more wet here. So it may end up with a little bit more blooms in it, but I'm okay with that look of having that blooms. So I'm just going to let that dry as well. So again, I'm going to be starting medium shade here at the back. This is my darkest amount of pigment. That's what I meant to say. I'm going to clean my brush off, just take some clear water, press this and pull this out this direction to make it a little bit lighter. Pick up that emerald green color, tap a little bit of that in there, and let it do its magic on its own. My petals are dry, so I'm going to start the next ones next to them. Now that they're dry, I can go ahead and start that next area. I'm going to be starting with an Indian yellow color here in the centers, and I'm going to be dabbing this color on. Now you might want to leave a little bit of a bright white highlight in there from your paper to give it that really bright look. I'm going to be tapping it a little close to my flowers, and maybe you'll be able to see where some of that fresh red paint is kind of leaching up into there and creating just a real pretty look of blending up in, and that's intentional. I wanted that look of to have that little bit of deep color that might be right at the base of that where the center is connecting to my top. So once again, I'm going to be leaving a little bit of bright white paper showing as my highlights. Now while that's still wet, I'm going to be coming in with a little bit of this rusty brown color, and I'm going to be tapping a little bit of that in as well right at the base to give it a little bit more interest and coloration right at the base of my flower. I'm not using a lot of water with this one. It's mostly pigment, more like a milk consistency, and I'm going to be tapping that color in while my colors are still wet. I'm going to be leaving the top a little bit brighter, and the dark color is going to be at the base of that little centerpiece. Now, if your flowers are dry, fairly dry, you can come in and do a little bit of your stem work as well. I'm going to be just choosing to use this number. It's a number 6 is what I'm using for my little lines, and I'm coming in and I'm not going to be doing just a total solid line of that color, or at least I'm trying not to. I kind of want to break it up because I'm going to be using a little bit another shade of green. So there's my first shade, and then I'm going to just choose a different shade of green, and really make sure I'm tapping my brush so I don't have a lot of water in there. And then I can come in and add just a little bit more of a brighter shade of green or off to the side so I have a two-tone look on my stems. It's going to get a lot more interest once we add the doodles, so I'm not worried about that. Is it all done in just a one time? So I'm going to be adding more interest when I come back and do my doodles. Let's go ahead and add just a tiny bit more color to my petals using the same color and using about milk consistency, and let's add a little bit more color to those petals. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more of that bright yellow color into the centers as well. Maybe even tapping a little bit of that red area that's wet that I just put on. That's going to give it a very interesting look on the corners and the edges of that centerpiece. Okay, let's let that dry and we will come back and add a little bit of a wash background. But you can see how those colors are kind of blending together on the edges, coming together nicely. So let's give it a nice dry before we were to add the background and start again. I completely forget, I wanted to add a little bit of a bee somewhere in my flowers, wherever it might make sense. You could add more than one, but I'm thinking I'm going to be adding a little bee here. So I'm going to be doing just a small little round head is what I'm going to be creating the head with. And then the body is just a sideways little teardrop coming off to the back, just a tiny little one. And there's going to be two little wings that will be popping off to the side here. And that's all there is to a little tiny bee to be able to do something like that. Once I have the flowers all dry in the background, I'm ready to work on my background color. I'm going to be using a Payne's Gray, which is a beautiful kind of a navy shade of gray. And I'm going to be working around my flowers, trying not to get a lot of that color in there. I'm going to be changing the direction of my brush stroke as well, so I have a little bit of texture that way. I don't want it to be the same tone as my flowers, so I really want to make sure I have enough water in my paint so it's not getting, it doesn't become the focal point of my painting. I just want it to be a nice little washy background. So plenty of water. Change the backing or the direction of my brush as I'm coming and going. Now, if you do want to add yellow into your little bee, you might want to leave the body just white and then come back in and add a little bit of yellow to it as well. If I add the yellow on top of the blue, it's going to look, I'm going to get that green look, so I really want to kind of leave that a little open if I want to add that color. Now you can see some of the background in between my flowers. I'm going to go in there quickly, brush a little bit, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time in there. This paint is fairly fresh and watercolor is not a permanent paint. So if I go in there and rub too much with my background, my red is going to rub out, my green's going to rub toward it. And remember, watercolor always wants to travel wherever the paper is wet. So if I float that color, like that's almost getting too much water into that area. I want to be a little careful with how much water I'm putting on. So go quickly, move your brush. Don't get overzealous with the water to create these backgrounds. All of the watercolor nice and dry, I'm going to start working with my pen work. I'm going to be working with a Micron 01 point. This is a permanent ink pen. It works great for using with watercolor because it is a permanent pen. You don't have to worry about it moving around once it's dry. The key for this pen is to make sure it's dry before you were to put any other water on top of it. I'm going to be tracing over my bee. I'm going to do some little squiggle lines to add my stripes. And I think this time around, I'm going to be using a glitter gel pen to add my yellow. So there's the black part of my bee. Let's go ahead and take a little bit of this golden yellow glitter pen to add the yellow part. Yeah, that does show up. So it's like a little golden color. It's very pretty. To be able to add just a little bit of bright metallic gold would work too. Now I said I was going to do a little flying pattern on here, so I'm going to come from my tail and then just do a little dash mark. And this just is going to represent a flight pattern from where the bee came from. It's just a nice little whimsical look that I love to create with this. Now let's go ahead and continue on with some of the pen work. When I'm doing the outlining of the flower, I want to do a real irregular line. I'm going for that very much that sketch look. And so I'm going to do broken line and irregular. I'm even going to be coming past my petals and not actually drawing or tracing over exact. I like that look of having just a real hand sketch look to it, and that's how you're going to create it, or at least I create it that way. And it's okay to double up on your lines and go past your painting. You don't have to follow it exact in this style of doing this pen work. I'm creating a few little dots here as to represent some seeds on those little echinacea. Has that kind of a little bit of a look. And I'm just going to continue on with that same style of pen work. Coming in between, I'm going to be loosening it up a little bit as well by adding some mixed media look in here and adding some different pens. And then I'm also going to be doing some different doodle patterns. So go ahead, and I'm going to probably speed this up a little bit, and you can watch as I create this. Okay, let's do a little bit more doodling. So let's add some of these like free form, I don't know, just little doodle flowers. So you can watch as I do these, create as many as you like to be able to do, but it's just a fun little pattern. This is a bookmark that I created with the same idea, using the same flowers and the colors, and just created it as a bookmark. So there's many different ways that you can use these little drawings. Ahead and create just a fun little border all around the outside. So I'm just going to be doing some line work, some zigzags, and then coming back around. Very just a fun whimsical border. You can double up on your lines as well with this. It doesn't have to be a single line. You can add some looseness that way. Let's add a few little X's to make it look like maybe it was even tacked with a stitch to add a little bit of interest that way. And then next we'll be using a little bit more creative pen work to add some more interest to this little drawing. Or painting at this point. I'm going to be using this gold pen here, and I'm going to be getting out my Jelly Roll neon pens. These are one of my favorites. If you watch along on my channel often, you know that these are some of my favorites. And I'm going to be adding some of this gel pen look to my flowers. This is where I get to scribble. I love to scribble. I love adding the little scribbly bits to my paintings. This, of course, is all optional, and you could have left it as a watercolor painting and not have done any of the mixed media steps. This part is all optional. You get as creative as you want with your painting. That's the fun part about doing these, is that you get to make your choices and your creative choices. And what looks good to you is what you would add to yours. So that was a bright pink color. I'm going to add some of this green onto here and add a little bit more scribbly bits to my leaves. For me, this just kind of loosens up my line work and just adds that next layer of interest for me. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take this Deco Art gold metallic pen and add a few little gold dots in the center. I like this little bit of metallic color, mixing it up. I'm going to be adding a tiny bit more also with a product called Stickles. And it is a beautiful glitter. It's a great way to use glitter without not having to get glitter everywhere. Stickle works great for that. So I'm going to take a little bit of the Stickles. It has a very much a precision tip on the end. And I'm going to be adding just a few little dots in my background. Now Stickles has an interesting property where it looks 3D when it's on your paper, and it's going to actually dry that way too. It'll lessen the dome as it dries, but it will be raised when it dries, which really does create this very interesting look of a 3D glitter dot in the background. And it's wonderful because you can have a little bit of sparkly glitter without having glitter everywhere on your table. But I do enjoy glitter as well. But this is just another way to do glitter and sparkles. Okay, I'm going to stop because my tendency is want to do more and more. Okay, there it is. She's done. Let's go ahead and sign. Pick a spot to where to put my name. I'm going to be signing in pencil as well, and I'm thinking I'm going to sign here. Even though that glitter dot is pretty close, I'm still going to sign here at the bottom. Follow my leaf. I like signing in pencil. If I mess it up, I can change it, but I just like that subtleness of the pencil. And there she is, all sitting pretty and looking nice. So let's go ahead and change this back. There we go. So I really do like how it all turned out. I'm hoping you'll give this flower a try, coneflower, echinacea, whatever you might want to call it. It's just a very pretty flower to do, very simple to do, easy steps. And I'm hoping you'll try it, not just once, but twice. It's a quick draw, it's a quick paint, and it's fun to do. She'd make a beautiful card as well. Well, that is it, my crafty friends. If you wouldn't mind, if you found value here and you're new to my channel, go ahead and consider subscribing. I would love to have new artist friends who come along and follow along. Click that bell. You'll get a notification from YouTube of when I put up my new videos, which is very helpful as well. And also, if you wouldn't mind leaving me a comment, let me know what you think about. Do you think these flowers are easy enough to do and create? And if you might, give them a try. Well, thanks everyone for joining me. Hopefully you'll come back and see me again. And next time you'll create along with me.